Hi, everybody. I'm George Siegal. Welcome to the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. In my documentary film, The Last House Standing, we went to Mexico Beach and Panama City, Florida, that were hit hard by Category 5 Hurricane Michael in 2018. There were so many sad stories from that area of residents not only wiped out by the storm, but then taken advantage of by lowlifes that swooped in afterwards and ripped people off. One of the people we interviewed for the film was Kimberly Smith. Here's a little bit of what she said then.
We've never had a storm of this magnitude. Nobody's ever had a storm of this magnitude. The shingles blew off the roof. The shingles blew off the roof within about the first hour of the storm. And after that, because it was raining, torrentious rains, the water was coming through the roof where there were no shingles, down through the ceilings and through the walls. It saturated the walls and the ceiling. In my bathroom, the power lines fell on my house and made a hole in my roof. And the roof in there, the ceiling in there actually had a belly that was about to collapse.
I had the chance to sit down with her recently and see how she's doing 4.5 years after Hurricane Michael. I'm George Siegal, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Your home is probably your biggest investment. And every week we show you warning signs and solutions to help you protect it. Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
No problem, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, we first met probably at one of the lowest points for you after Hurricane Michael, and you took us on a tour of your house. And it was it looked like it was a real challenge getting everything back together. Tell us between then, back in 2000, I think it was 2018, early 19, how are you doing now?
Well, as far as how I am doing, my house is not doing well. So I guess that means I don't really think I'm doing well either. For this to be around 1,200 days since the hurricane. I still do not live in my home. My home was very close to being finished, and on February 14th, the painters found a problem with my drywall, and as we speak today, the drywall that was replaced in my house when my house had to be gutted after the hurricane is being demoed. It's being taken out, and there's a dumpster in my driveway again.
Wow. First of all, it's lucky they caught it, even though it seems like it took so long to get to that point. Do you have any idea? Was that Chinese drywall? Was that just defective drywall?
It's just defective drywall. It is not Chinese drywall. Evidently, when this run of drywall was made, the manufacturer says it's something called iron slag. And what it was doing was making little rocks in the drywall, and they were popping out. But I can say that the drywall company has been very forthcoming and helpful, and they're doing all that they can to fix the house. So I'm
that's great to hear.
That.
Yeah, yes. Because you've had some bad luck with other people that came in. So let's go back through that. We after the hurricane, your house is badly damaged, all the water that came in. And then the unscrupulous people tend to roll in and take advantage of people. And you were a victim of that. How are you doing with all of that?
I'm doing well with all of that. That is all settled. Both of those individuals, well, one for sure is still in prison. The other one, I'm not sure what's going on with him. But after a lengthy lawsuit, I was able to get my money back from them, or some of my money, not all of it, but most of it. But there were many, many people that they took advantage of, especially elderly people that did not get their money back. And those people, unfortunately, are still living in travel trailers because they don't have the money to fix their house because it was taken by the crooked contractor.
That's awful. And one of the things we always talk about, I've talked about this with disaster experts, right after the disaster, some real heroes step up, first responders, people that can provide immediate needs, but it also brings in a whole wave of people that see it as an opportunity to take advantage of other people. What's the mood of the community, your neighbors, people you know, knowing first you're victimized by a storm, then you're victimized by people trying to rip you off?
Yeah. Fortunately, most of those people are gone now. It has been a long time since the storm, and people have moved on, and most everybody in our town, their houses are repaired and they're back on to their normal lives. Our children at school, not only did they endure the hurricane, then they had the pandemic, but they actually seem to be getting back to some type of normalcy themselves now. Um, but in our sweet little town, I was born in Panama City, Florida. I lived there my whole life, and there are places now that I will drive into work and there's a building there. And then when I come home at the end of the school day, the building is gone. That happens all the time. Like, I cannot tell you how many times that's happened, probably a good 50, 60 times. You drive around town to go run an errand, and there's a shop there one day from pre-Hurricane Michael, and then you go shopping on that errand again in a couple of weeks, and that same building is gone. So that's a big heartache and a heartbreak. The other thing, the trees, it still looks horrible in our town because the trees are still standing snap. Last summer, we had some significant wildfires in our area, and actually, people who had rebuilt their homes after the hurricane lost them in fires due to all the wood that's on the ground that burned.
Well, that's awful to hear that. And then when you're sitting where you are and you see Hurricane Ian last year and what that did to Sanibel Island, what's the reaction of your community when you see how bad it is to, fellow Floridians that are now the ones in the spotlight taking a beating?
Yeah, listening to others have to endure what we did and knowing what's going to happen afterwards. I don't really think the storm is the bad part. The bad part is what comes afterwards, having to deal with it. And once you've been through that kind of trauma, it doesn't matter what kind of weather catastrophe it is, whether it's a blizzard, whether it's wildfires, whether it's tornadoes, you know what those people are going to go through to get their lives back together, and how
Yeah,
long that takes.
we had a disaster expert on last week. I had a gentleman on who talked about what it takes for a community to recover after a disaster. And one of the areas they studied was with Hurricane Katrina. And they found that communities that were tightly wound together, that cared about each other, that had a purpose to rebuild and the interest in doing it, rebuilt a lot faster than ones that maybe were more divided. Everybody kind of went their own way and did their own thing. How would you describe the spirit in your community? And do you think it helped or hurt the amount of time to get back to some semblance of normal?
Oh, I definitely think it helped. Our community, no matter what we go through, is always very giving and supportive and helpful of each other, no matter what we're going through. It can be someone who's been in an accident and a family, that needs help, and everybody comes together. Our community would have been far worse off had we been not such a close, helpful community.
Now, one of the things that concerns me as an outsider, but somebody who just sees this stuff all the time and is driven to try to make a difference with it, is Mexico Beach, for example. When they changed the building code after Michael, they raised it a little bit and made it a little tougher. But if another Category 5 hurricane hits, they're not built for that. They're building to 140 miles an hour wind standard. What's going on in Panama City, and what do y'all think about as you're rebuilding if another storm like Michael was to hit you?
I do not know about the building and the codes that are going on. I do know that the structures seem to be being built better than what they were before. And of course, our town was so old that the codes and the materials that had been used, Panama City was an older town. It was not new. And so therefore, the destruction was a lot worse because things were so old. But I think that the codes and the new materials that are being used will most definitely make a difference.
It's time for emergency preparedness to go mainstream. Smart, innovative, practical solutions that match your needs. Instinct Ready educates, prepares, and equips the everyday person for disaster. With promo code Make It Better, you can access comprehensive preparedness courses and premium go bags. Visit InstinctReady.com with promo code Make It Better today. Preparedness starts at home.
My house I didn't have that kind of damage as far as the structure, for them to have to do anything structurally to fix my house. Mine was just cosmetic. Mine was just taking out walls, taking out drywall and replacing flooring. Mine was water damage on the inside of the house.
Which is still a significant disruption, and it's
it
one.
was significant.
Yeah, and you guys were terrified during the storm, as you told us of you didn't know that the house would survive, but the water coming in had to just be terrifying for you.
It was very terrifying. And the whole time you're thinking, the roof is going to come off. The roof is going to come off. And I had my granddaughters and my son and my mom, and it was very scary. It was very scary.
Now, your mom's house was completely destroyed by it. We saw all the stuff laying out on the front of the house that had to be, that either blew there or was taken out because it was wet and ruined. How's your mom doing today?
My mom's doing very well. She has a new little home that she got hers not long after the hurricane. She was able to recover fairly quickly, and because her whole thing was gone, her whole house was gone. She didn't have to repair it. She just bought a new one, and
So
that
she
makes
moved
it much
somewhere
easier.
else. She had to move to a
No,
different
no,
location.
no. She lives in the same place. She lives in the same place where I grew up. So she lives in a mobile home,
That
and she bought another mobile home. It's much smaller and not as big as the one that she previously had, but she enjoys it, and her yard is back to normal, and she has a little garden that makes her happy, and she's doing very well. And many people are doing very well. More people than not. There are just a few of us, but my house is so big that when you try to repair a house that size, it takes a while. And when as many homes are as under construction as what we had, it's hard to find people to work, and it takes longer to get things fixed because there are just too many jobs for everybody to get to.
Well, it's great to hear that so many people are moving in a positive direction, because after the storm, the media is gone. I mean, the local
Yeah.
media is still there, but the national attention on you goes away pretty quickly when you probably need it the most. And one of the things I heard was people who had flood insurance and who had regular insurance, that the entities fight over it, of who's responsible for paying them. And the people get delayed even longer for getting their claims. Did you see much of that going on there? Because I know it's happened in other places. I haven't really heard about Panama City, but I know it's a real problem when you have two people deciding, no, you pay, no, you pay.
I don't think many of us, well, I'll take that back. I'm sure that there were people who had that kind of problem, but most of the people that I know, personally, we were just dealing with hurricane claims. There weren't flooding claims because our water damage was from the rain. It wasn't really from the water. Now, that would have been different at the Gulf of Mexico, where Mexico Beach is. But for the most part, except for Mexico Beach, there were so many of us inland that it wasn't as much of a flood issue as it was a water issue. And initially, there was not a lot of coverage, not initially, not ever really, for Hurricane Michael. And people had trouble. I think that everybody else didn't realize how significant that storm was and the damage that it wiped out our town pretty much. And we don't have really a small town. It would be a good medium-sized town, and the damage spread for hundreds of miles. The damage went all the way up into Alabama and Georgia. So there was a lot of damage, and I don't think that the insurance companies realized how bad it was until they got there, which wasn't for a few weeks because you couldn't get into the town. And so I think her insurance companies didn't realize how bad the damage was, and they were balking a little bit at paying claims until they realized how bad the damage really was. I personally and my mom, neither one of us had any problems getting our insurance companies to pay. But there were a lot of people who had to fight with their insurance companies to get payment.
Sure. I trash those guys all the time. So who do you have that's a good guy? Do you mind saying? Because I think they should be applauded.
I have Florida Farm Bureau, and
Okay.
Florida Farm Bureau was amazing. I have no complaints whatsoever about that insurance company. They did a phenomenal job.
That's terrific to hear. Now, as somebody, when you watch it from afar, you know, Mexico Beach gets all the publicity because it's that beachfront property that's all of a sudden obliterated. But quite often, the most significant damage, or a lot of that damage, trails further inland, like where you guys are. You don't get storm surge, but you get the wind and the rain and all that other stuff. Looking back, is there anything you think you could have done differently? Is there something you think, maybe a choice you could have made with how to do your roof? Is there something that you second guess yourself on and say, well, I'll be more prepared next time?
Well, I think a lot of people did a lot of things with their roofs to repair them so that when the storm does come back, and you'll see a lot of metal roofs in our town that were not there before. Um, but I think the one thing for me is that you always have to make sure that that roof is in good shape to begin with. You know, as your home ages, you need to make sure that you change out your roof, your shingles and things so that they do adhere. I think the reason my house took so much damage, I had nothing blocking the wind. My house actually blocked the wind of other structures around me, and they did not receive as much damage as I did because my house is on the top of the hill, and my house is the tallest house. My house is very tall. And there was not even trees. You know, my house was as tall as the trees were. So there wasn't really anything to block my house. Whereas my house blocked two or three of the smaller houses around me, and they did not receive as much damage. So I think the location and the size of my house had a lot to do with the amount of damage that it took.
You know, I live in Tampa, where we were supposed to be a bullseye for Ian, and it ended up missing us. And I think that a lot of people here just give a sigh of relief and they move on and they don't think about it. Do people where you are, now that you've been a victim of a Category 5 hurricane, do you worry about the next one? Do you think about how vulnerable you might be where you are? Or do you just get back to a normal life?
Both. You don't really think about it until there is a storm, you know, and then whenever they start talking about a storm. But, you know, no matter where you live, pretty much, you're going to have some kind of catastrophe, natural disaster that you cannot control. There are, you know, the people in California can't control the wildfires. They can't control those things happening. The people who live in the middle of the United States can't control the tornadoes that are going to happen. People who live near water, because that's how they work and make a living, they can't control floods. The people up north can't control how much snow is going to fall and go through their roof. So I just think that no matter where you are, and you're going to have those things, and you can't make yourself miserable all the time and dwell on storms. I do know that we're a bit more wary even of when a good thunderstorm comes up than what we used to be. We're
I,
we're far more likely to have things charged and ready to go when when we know that the weather's going to be bad than we were in the past.
Do you think you would evacuate next time, or you would ride it out again?
I will not evacuate.
Interesting. You know, when you see some of that other damage, like the tragic tornadoes that we've seen recently, all the damage from snow, the wildfires, and all that stuff, it just makes you think, well, those things tend to happen where you're not watching it for a week, slowly coming towards you. And it's that slow, agonizing pain of seeing what's headed your way. And then sometimes they turn and you miss the whole thing. Like that's what happened with us last year. We almost got nothing from Ian, and it looked like we were going to get wiped out. So there is that false sense of confidence that I think a lot of Floridians have.
The storm was not supposed to hit us. And the storm, when we went to bed the day before, it was a Category 3 storm. It wasn't until the morning that the storm was coming that, you knew how bad it was going to be. And it was not supposed to hit us. It was supposed to hit out at the beach. And had it hit at the beach, the trajectory would have gone a different way. We've had many storms hit the beach in the past, and the damage in town where I am was not nearly as bad. But the storms that have hit Pensacola, the storms that you think they're coming to you and then they end up in Louisiana. Hurricanes are so unpredictable.
They are. The main thing, though, that I always hear, and I heard it from the mayor of Malibu talking about the people that were out in California after the wildfire. He goes, people have short memories. He goes, 5 years from now, this will just be a memory. I mean, you guys are still rebuilding, but you think it's a memory that will stick.
Yes. For those of us that are 20 years and older, yes, it will stick. The kids younger than that, I don't know. But for those of us who had to endure the rebuilding and going through getting the insurance companies and the crooks that came to town, yes, I don't think that we're going to forget for a very long time. I don't think people realize, we didn't get the news coverage that other places got, but our little town was pretty much completely wiped out. Our infrastructure, it was bad, and people that, especially people that are my age, people who are in their 40s, they won't ever forget this. This will be around forever.
Sure, and in fairness to the mayor, yes, when he talks about people that forget and have short memories, it's the people who miss out on the disaster. It's the people who, okay, the storm blows by you, like has happened to us here in Tampa almost every year. So people just put it behind them because they go, we're going to be fine. But when you're a victim, that can be a life-altering circumstance that some people never get out of.
Yeah, I will not ever be the same. I am not the same person that I was before that day, and I won't ever be the same. My home, my family lives around me, and my home was the place where we gathered. And when I built my home, it was built for my family to gather and for me to make memories there. And I think about things that are probably insignificant to others, but I raised my granddaughter in that house, and we talked and dreamt of her turning sweet 16 and having that fabulous party at our house, and other events, babies that have been born in my family, and we didn't get to have those baby showers there. Friends that got married that would have probably had their reception at my house, because I'd had a couple of receptions at my house. Those kind of memories I don't get to have of my house. I lost so much that meant a lot to me. And you can't get those things back. My granddaughter won't ever turn 16 again. She won't ever graduate from high school again. And, we missed having her graduation party there. So there are things that I won't ever be the same. I won't ever be the same. And I am still displaced, of course. And I still drive an hour to work and an hour home from work every day. And when you think about it, that's 10 hours a week. That's more than a work day for an 8-hour workday person. And what it takes away from my life, the driving and what I don't have time to do, is significant. And it has definitely aged me and changed me.
When you hear the expression, well, that's just the price of living in paradise, is it worth the price?
Oh, I am not one. I don't think I'm one of the believers that Florida is paradise. I think people who don't live here might think so, but
Okay.
I would never change where I live because of the hurricanes. No, I would not.
Okay.
But when I build my next house, it's going to be a lot farther inland than what mine is right now.
And build it out of concrete.
Yeah, something that's going to last.
Absolutely.
Something that can withstand the storm.
So to wrap this up, what advice would you have for other people, whether it's Floridians, anybody living in a place where a disaster could strike, and we've said that could be just about everywhere. What advice do you have to people so maybe they can be somewhat more prepared?
Well, if you are building a house, to be aware of the materials that you use and the construction that's done. The other thing I would say is that you need to make sure that your insurance coverage is what it needs to be, to replace your things. Mine was, and I was very fortunate with that, but a lot of people were not. And you need to have a list of your items, and you need to be prepared to be without electricity for a very long time. We were without electricity for 21 days. And that was hard. There are a lot of things that you can do to prepare yourself, but there are a lot of things that you can't keep it from happening either. So it was a horrible time, and I hope that in my lifetime I never see such again.
Well, Kimberly, I admire your spirit, and you've been so gracious sharing your story and all you've been through. I hope it gets back to somewhat more normal quickly. I want you to get back in that house, but I really do appreciate your time and wish you the best.
All right. Thanks very much, George. It's been good talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. If you have any ideas for future podcasts, or you have an interesting story of your own that you'd like to share, I would love to hear from you. You'll find a link to my contact form in the show notes. All my social media info is there as well, along with a link to my documentary film, The Last House Standing. I hope you'll check it out. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.